Welcome everybody to Rock Talk Reviews. That's right, where I'm going to review a entire catalog of an artist. This artist in particular this week is going to be Black Sabbath. And the reason why I'm doing this and not our normal podcast is because Dan did need some time off, and he was not available to do a podcast with me this weekend. So I decided I'll give you guys something to chew on. You may not like what I have to say about this, but I'm going to review the entire catalog of Black Sabbath. They are one of my favorite bands, next to Iron Maiden, probably my favorite band, and I've loved Sabbath since I was about 8 years old. First time I heard like Paranoid, Iron Man, and War Pigs, I was hooked. So we're gonna go through the entire catalog. I think they have 19 studio albums. I'm not even gonna talk about the live albums, even though Live at Last and Live Evil and the reunion albums, they're great live albums for what they are. I'm not even going to touch them. I'm just going to do studio albums, and I'm not going to include Heaven and Hell's album, the band Heaven and Hell, which pretty much was just Black Sabbath with Dio under a different name. I'm not going to include that in this. We'll say that's like a honorable mention, we'll say, but I'm not going to rank that. That was a great album, but it has a different name, so we're not going to go there. So we're going to start right now from the beginning. Of course, Black Sabbath has been around since 1969, and they've had a bunch of different singers. Sound varies like a lot between the Ozzy stuff from 69, 70, and the Dio stuff from more recently even. We can't forget Tony Martin was in the band. Glenn Hughes was in the band for a little bit. Ian Gillan was in the band for a little bit, and all released albums. Some are good, some are bad, some are odd, some are awful. Okay, we're going to start with number 19. Probably an awful album, Forbidden. Now, Ice-T popping up to rap over The Illusion of Power was just too much for me. The mix isn't very good. It's a forgettable album produced by body count guitar player Ernie C., and just the less we talk about it, the better. Number 18 would be Cross Purposes, which has a bunch of inconsistent songs tossed together. Now, at least there's no rapping on this one. That's why it's not at the bottom. It's at number 18. But Cross Purposes, again, from 1994. It's another album you could pretty much forget about. 17 would be Seven Star from 1986. Now, Tony Iommi wanted this to be a solo album, and the record company pretty much said, no, that's not going to happen. Release it under the name Black Sabbath. But when you think about it as a solo album, that's how you have to look at it. His riffing is different in it. Glenn Hughes is a fantastic vocalist, but this shouldn't be a Sabbath album. And No Stranger to Love is very 80s cheesy power ballady. It's interesting to check out, but it's nothing you're going to go back to time and time again, I don't think. Seven Star is just something that, listen to it if you're interested in seeing Sabbath. Hearing Sabbath at like their strangest, we'll say. Next up, we have The Eternal Idol from 1987. This is the first album of Tony Martin. Now, Tony Martin's a fantastic vocalist who doesn't get enough recognition, I don't think, especially the albums he does with Sabbath. Now, he's a pretty good fit to fill the role left by Dio. But the songs, they're just not heavy enough. They're not epic enough. They're just not there. Eternal Idol's very forgettable, unfortunately. Next up is Tear from 1990. Pretty much just the Headless Cross Part 2, which is another album by Tony Martin, which is way lower on my list. Tony Martin takes Black Sabbath into like the mystical realm kind of thing. A lot of talk of mythology and mysticism in this album, and it's a weird mix too. I don't think Iommi's guitar is heavy enough, really, in this mix, and it's kind of average. There's a few good tracks here and there, but nothing to write home about. Tears, kind of forgettable also. Next up, we have Never Say Die from 1978, which is the last album they did in the 70s with Ozzy, before they gave him the boot. The title track's okay. Johnny Blade's okay. There's maybe 2 or 3 songs on this album I'll go back to, but pretty much it's not the Sabbath that I love. It's not the Sabbath I know. Next up, Technical Ecstasy, 1976. Dirty Women's a decent song, but other than that, I really don't like Technical Ecstasy. And the album cover alone, it looks like 2 robots peeing on each other up an escalator or something. just the whole thing's odd. It's just a very odd album, and it's not very memorable. Now we're getting into stuff that is kind of memorable. I know a lot of people probably have this next one higher on their list than me, but Born Again from 1983. One would think that Ian Gillan from Deep Purple would be a fine man to front Black Sabbath, but it just isn't true. The album's kind of a mess. There's some really good tracks on it, like Trashed. The first track on the album is fantastic. And while I was like doing some research for this video, apparently like Robert Plant was considered, David Coverdale, Michael Bolton was considered to front Sabbath at one time, and Ian Gillan has gone on record as saying he was the worst singer Black Sabbath ever had. I don't know about that, but it just, the production's horrible on this, and there's some tracks that are real bad, I think, personally. And I know a lot of people, especially on our Facebook group, are going to say, no, this is one of their favorites. But just to me, it just didn't work as well as it probably should have. Maybe it should have given him another chance, maybe. Because Ian Gillan's a fantastic vocalist. I mean, look what he's done with Deep Purple for how many years. Well, moving on from that, one of the best albums that Sabbath put out post-Ozzy, post-Dio, Headless Cross from 1989. Tony Martin is awesome on this one. He's so underrated. The songs are fantastic. It has a great, heavy classic rock vibe to it. Check it out. This is probably the most underrated Black Sabbath album there is. It's so good. It's way better than anyone gives it credit for. It's fantastic. And unfortunately, it's still not available on any streaming services, so it's kind of hard to find. I still have my copy of it. I bought it actually when it was new on cassette. But it's a great album. Hellish Cross is a fantastic song. Black Moon is one of my favorite songs by Black Sabbath. And it has this really great, heavy 70s rock vibe to it. That it's probably the closest thing to the Dio era Sabbath albums without being a Dio fronted Sabbath album. It's really good. Next up is 13 from 2013. That brings Ozzy, Tony, and Geezer back together for like the first time since Never Say Die. But a lot of people like this album. I miss having Bill Ward playing drums. The drummer, whoever drummed on the album, I don't remember who it was, but he did a good job. But to me, I was hoping it was going to be, the four guys from Sabbath doing one more round. Still a good album, but it's nowhere near as great as a lot of people made it out to be. I only recently went back to it to give it a listen with fresh ears. It's okay. It's not as good as the next couple. Of course, that's where I have it on my list, because it just didn't do it for me like maybe it should have, but and maybe it's just me in the back of my head saying like, I feel they screwed over Bill Ward, the drummer, and me being a drummer, me enjoying the drums of Bill Ward from past albums. It's like, kind of missed that chance, guys. Next up is Dehumanizer from 1992. Dio returned to Black Sabbath in the early 90s with Vinny Appice, or Appice, depending on how you want to pronounce the drummer's last name. First time since Mob Rules. This was raw, heavy. Tracks like I, Computer God, TV Crimes, all very doomy, Black Sabbath-y. Dio's voice, it just shines on this album. It's fantastic. Now, there's another one. I don't like the mix on this album, especially the drums. Now, I haven't really checked out the remix version, the remastered version, but this one, when it first came out, like the drums kind of sounded like he was banging on like cardboard boxes half the time. But other than that, the songs are really, really good. They're really solid songs. I could just go on and probably name every track. I don't think there's like a really bad, boring track on that album. Really good stuff. Dehumanizer, another one that doesn't get the love that it should. Next up, one that does get a lot of love is Mob Rules from 1981. Second album Dio sang on, Turn Up the Night, Mob Rules, Sign of the Southern Cross. One of my favorite Sabbath songs with Dio. So good, so epic. I love this whole album. It's the first album with Vinny Appice playing drums, taking over for Bill Ward. Kind of wish Bill just stuck with Sabbath, but apparently he didn't. But Vinny does a decent job, he's a great, solid drummer. Next up. Now, this is higher on a lot of people's lists. Volume 4 is not as high on my list. Volume 4, 1972. It's dirty, it's doomy, it is awesome. It's just not as awesome as the other ones, to me. Tomorrow's Dream, Snowblind, Wheels Confusion, Supernauts, Under the Sun. The piano ballad Changes is on there, which is kind of a little departure for Sabbath. A lot of doom metal bands and stoner rock bands really point to this album as saying, like, this is where the sound comes from. Volume 4 is where they mastered that sound. I like it, I just don't go back to it as much as the other ones. Like the next one on my list, which is Black Sabbath's Sabotage. I think it came out in 1975 or so. Bill Ward is known for saying it's like the only album ever made with lawyers in the studio. Hole in the Sky, Symptom of the Universe, man. That's like the first thrash song like that. Symptom of the Universe just sounds just as heavy today as it did back then. It's just like there's so much aggression in those first couple songs in that album. And then like there's a lot of like different things that they throw in. They're really stretching it out in Sabotage. They started doing that, I think, in Sabbath Play Sabbath, but by the time they hit Sabotage, they're really, really, really stretching out what they could do. Like the second half of Symptom of the Universe, where it kind of gets all a little funky and kind of like there's like almost like a little reggae island feel to some of it. Really neat stuff, man. It really is cool. Sabotage doesn't get the love that it should, I think. Great album. Next up is the one that started it all, Black Sabbath, from 1970. You know, you got the opening, you know, the tritone, you know, you got the rain, the bells, and then that's that guitar that just kicks in. And then the screaming, Ozzy scream, oh no, you know, please God help me. That kind of thing. From start to finish, it's amazing. NIB, you know, there's this awesome distorted bass solo before it. The Wizard, Wicked World, the whole album. Even like the 13-minute The Warning. I think it's like 13 minutes long or something. The first like Black Sabbath's first epic song. You know, it was long and it's cool for what it is though, man. It's I really still enjoy listening to The Warning. Even the middle part, which they kind of go off on these little tangents and stuff. But it's a great album. It started it all. I still say like that is where heavy metal became heavy metal. Was Black Sabbath's first album. Next up is Heaven and Hell from 1980. The first one with Dio. Black Sabbath really bounced back after Never Say Die. It had a great sound to a great mix. Children of the Sea, Heaven and Hell. It's just so Dio, and he does such a great job, man. And there's not a bad track on that album either. It's fantastic. And I go back to it more and more, especially now since we've been doing these videos. I've been rediscovering like the stuff that I haven't listened to in a while, and I've been going back to Heaven and Hell, that album especially, a lot. Next up, Master of Reality, Sweet Leaf, Children of the Grave, Solitude. You know, between Geezer Butler and Bill Ward really playing off each other on this album. It's fantastic. You know, like Ozzy singing, you know, just from the Master of Reality, which I think was their third album. Ozzy singing just goes up a notch. It really does. Like, the whole band just kind of, you know, did a step up from Black Sabbath and Paranoid, which are great albums, you know, by themselves. But like the third one, the Master of Reality, it really started to really shine, and like they have the Sabbath sound started to really, really, you know, coming into its own. You know, it's just so heavy. Master of Reality is really heavy, especially for 71. Next up, which is my number 2, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath from 1973. Really cool story I read about this is they were rehearsing in this castle called Clearwell Castle, in the dungeon, and they claimed they were encountering ghosts, and that gave them inspiration because they couldn't write a song. Things weren't working right, and these ghosts and whoever was spirits in the castle gave them inspiration. And I think Black Sabbath's Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is probably one of the best things they've ever done. It's awesome. And my favorite Black Sabbath song of all time, A National Acrobat, is on this album. That's another reason why it's number 2. Sabracadabra, another great song. I believe Metallica covered like a medley of Sabracadabra and National Acrobat together, it was good for them, you know. I wish they would just cover them separately, because they're two distinct songs. But Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is really good, man. If you haven't really checked that one out, and not just the hits on it. Like you got to listen to the whole thing, because the whole thing's just, there's not a bad track on it. And I believe the piano and the mini moog on this album are played by none other than Rick Wakeman. So that's pretty cool. There's a little trivia for y'all there. And finally, to end this video, my number one, of course, is going to be Paranoid. I remember hearing this album a long time ago. I was really young when I heard it. War Pigs is just a fantastic opener. I mean, it's so heavy, you know. And Paranoid, it's a radio staple, but I still love to listen to it. It's just great, you know. Hand of Doom, it's just it's bass at its best, you know. That's a song that's based around the bass guitar mainly. Electric Funeral, so heavy. And then there's the acoustic strumming of Planet Caravan. It's very just kind of groovy, stoned out, you know. Iron Man. I mean, okay, yeah, Iron Man's kind of cliche, but it has one of the greatest heavy metal riffs of all time. And if you're like starting to play guitar, like that's one of the first things you kind of learn how to play is Iron Man, you know. And it just goes, it's you know, some people are like, oh, it's like kind of hokey, but it's cool, man. Listen to Iron Man and think back to like when that came out. Like there was nothing like that, man. That was just heavy. And yeah, okay, it's simple because the vocals go right with the guitar riff most of the time. Na, 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 na. But it still rocks. It's awesome. And you know, one more thing I got to mention about that album, Rat Salad. Bill Ward becomes like this awesome drummer, you know, like for the first time in like the Sabbath albums. Like he really gets to show off because there's a nice little drum solo in that song, which is cool, man. You know, I love Bill Ward's style, you know. So wrapping this up, you know, Black Sabbath's one of those bands, like there's so many different aspects of Sabbath. You know, you throw on like Mob Rules, it sounds different than Paranoid, but is it any worse? No, not really. They're all really great albums from different eras. And, you know, Sabbath it's like, when we were talking like rock talk, and talking about the history of heavy metal, a lot of it does go back to Sabbath, whether you're talking about stoner rock, doom metal, thrash metal, normal heavy metal, it's all coming back to Black Sabbath. They really were innovative in what they did, because I guess back then it was like, hey, there's no rules, let's just do it. And they unknowingly were inventing, to me, a wide genre of music that's known as heavy metal. So there are the Black Sabbath albums from worst to best, at least what I think. What do you think? So let me know in the comments. And if you hate my list, great. If I said something stupid, great. Let me know. And we'll see you again. Rock Talk Reviews. Make sure you press the subscribe button and let us know. And, of course, join our group on Facebook. It's my dog back there. It's Lucy.